The last 1 or 2 months have been riddled with new updates, new skills, new modules. So many new things have been added that sometimes it's actually kind of hard to keep track of it. But today I'll be flying the villain. Now, yesterday or 2 days ago, there was a massive capital ship battle, and the first villain in the game. Okay, let me find the picture. There it is. 370 billion ISK. Now, this villain had A types, X types, B types, and I actually really do like this build. Triple armor plates, a full-on passive trunk. Now, I don't know what rigs this ship had, but it didn't tank a lot of damage. I honestly expected this ship to last a lot longer. Not really sure how long the logistics were on the grid, but if you know what happened, please do tell me in the comments down below. Now the stats of the ship haven't been changed. The villain is a armor tank. It has a good bonus on lightweight ship turret damage, also a good bonus on lightweight ship rocket damage, but primarily uses turrets. And since this is a Serpentis ship, it has a bonus on webs and it has the bonus on long range disruptors. Now this ship has a little bit over 1 million default hit points. This is the default defense of the ship, and this is a armor tank like mentioned before. 7768.37 DPS. Now this is the build that I used before. Dual adaptives, dual plates, a damage control, a capacitor battery, and dual armor repairs. On this ship I primarily use the stars, although you can use the interceptors if you like. All of them should have pretty good DPS now. After all, they have changed the lightweight ship damage. And I have all the necessary skills for this ship. Most of them are maxed out. Overall, the performance gains on this ship are also basically doubled from the last time. The previous DPS was about 3.6 thousand, now it's over 7.6 thousand, so yeah, the DPS has been doubled. That was the case with the previous two faction carriers, and overall their performance and tank has been significantly increased. For this ship, armor operation skills are going to be very important, especially for the armor plates if you like to go with the passive tank. Now, like I mentioned, dual adaptive harness, dual plates, damage control, capacitor battery, and dual armor repairers. I believe this is a DPS build, and yes, it is. Okay, so this is the cheaper build without integrations for maximum possible DPS, and the other engineering rigs are also standard. The hangar bay modification is the tier 4 one. Basically it gives me +2 the story base, but it sacrifices 1 medium slot. Now there is one new module added that a lot of you who like to fly these ships will love to have. I was talking about a damage mod for the lightweight ships, a specific damage mod, and the damage mod has been released. Swarm General Fire Control System. Now this basically combines the gyro stabilizers, it combines ballistic controls, tracking computers, magnetic field stabilizers. It is a all-in-one module, and here you can take a look at the stats. Currently the module is still unavailable, but the second the module is available, I'll be testing it out. And I believe with this module I'll be able to break perhaps 80,000, 90,000 DPS with a full-on glass build, which is going to be very interesting because technically the swarm defense module can kinda count as a damage mod. It does increase your damage by 60%, so you have this active module, you have the swarm defense module, and you have the rigs, and you have the implants, so there is a lot of ways to increase the damage output on these things. And speaking of implants, you have two options, well, three options, but two implants that I recommend. The thermal circulation. If you prefer to go full chunk, then the thermal circulation is definitely the way to go. 20% extra armor resistance combined with a full-on chunk rig setup and resistance modules, and this thing is nearly immortal. Now I say nearly immortal because all ships eventually die, especially a passive tank, but if you have a good logistic at your side, or if you have a good fleet to support you, then these things are very, very hard to kill. Now let's take a look at the active stats of this ship with the current build. I will show you several different builds that you can use for this ship. This is just one of them. Okay, let me adjust the modules real quick, just so that we have everything conveniently laid out. 7.6 thousand DPS, 5.4 million hit points, 81, 75, 76 and 66%. Okay, not bad, pretty solid. Now it's 16 million hit points with the damage control active, and with the defense module 9.7 thousand DPS and 20.5 million hit points, 95, 94, 94 and 91%. A pretty tanky little ship, I have to say, a pretty tanky little ship. And without the damage control, it's 6.9 million hit points, again pretty solid, and the resistance is also really good. Quite a satisfying number, I have to admit. Okay, now
docking request accepted.
Quickly dock and let me swap the implants. Now, since this is a, well, not a drone boat, but I guess a lightweight ship boat, and the drone bombs affect the DPS. So if you want to go with the DPS build, then I do recommend that you go with bombs. Works really well for PvP, works really well for PvE. These things clear encounters, clear missions, and clear nullsec anomalies extremely quickly. They have some very nice DPS now, combined with a very good tank. And since we have received more modules for these ships, they are definitely going to be a lot more fun to fly. Of course, if you like to fly them. In my case, I mostly fly dreadnoughts, but I do like the faction ships. I love all the faction ships in the game, and that includes the faction carriers. The general unit layout is going to be about the same. This is the layout that I like to use on this ship. You can choose any units that you like, but the current layout is focusing on armor repair and on armor volume, and the rig and the implant by itself increases the armor resistance. Now sometimes it doesn't want to show immediately, at least with the thermal circulation, but the effect does kick in eventually. With the drum bombs, you will lose the resistance, but your DPS will be basically tripled, which is good in some cases. Although in some other cases, having the tank is a lot more important than having the DPS. I guess in a big fleet, if you have a lot of logistic ships and if you have a lot of support, then the DPS build is one of the ways to go, but you can also go with a tank build. It really depends on the situation. 4.6 million hit points. I definitely lost a significant amount of tank there with the different implant. 5.8 million hit points now, 9.7 thousand DPS. With the drum bombs, that's about, I would say, 36 to 46,000 DPS. Again, it depends on what type of lightweight ships you have. 17 million hit points with the damage control, 94, 92, 92 and 89% resistance. Again, it's pretty good. The tank on this ship is indeed top notch, and it is fantastic. Okay, let me dock and let me show you
docking request
some more
accepted.
fits. Now this is the classic build that I use on the Revelation. triple adaptives, one reactive, one damage control, a capacitor battery, and dual armor repairs. This build works really well if you combine the modules with a tank rig layout, and this is basically the tank rig layout that I use on the Revelation. So far, a build like this seems to work really well. You will lose the DPS, you will lose some DPS, but you will gain a lot of tank. And let me just quickly swap to the thermal circulation, because a full tank layout, full tank rig layout works the best with the thermal circulation. Now you have resistance, and you get even more resistance. 63, 66, 79 and 70% cold resistance while docked. Let's check out the stats when everything is up and running.
Undocking.
Should be above 90% if my math is correct. Again, I've done so many tank builds, I just know what to expect from the ship, although sometimes the ship knows to surprise me. So let's take a look at the tank. 11 million hit points, 87, 87, 91 and 88%, which is pretty good. 5.5 thousand DPS is still pretty solid. 7.1 thousand DPS, 14 million hit points with the defense module active, 90, 91, 93 and 91%. 1.2 million armor. This thing has a lot of armor, by the way. One of the highest armor volumes of any ship in the game. And 42 million hit points, 97, 97, 98 and 97%. A super chunk. Okay, lovely. Well, definitely a very, very tanky boat. But I have more ideas to show you. Now I talked about the builds that the other villain was using, and I will show you that build in a moment here. 2.6 million hit points. I think this is another DPS build that I forgot to show you before. Oh, wait, oh, now I remember. Okay, I'm just showing you how the implant sometimes knows how to glitch out, and it doesn't really show you the stats immediately, and now it's much better. So sometimes if it doesn't show you the numbers, it doesn't mean that the implant is not working. For a second I actually thought that they changed how the implants work, so that for example, if you have the thermal circulation, an implant for relevance, if you have no relevance, then the implant will basically take no effect, which honestly might actually happen. They might actually do that in the future. That means you might not be able to use the implant or any of its effects unless you have the correct weapon for it on the ship. So for example, since this ship doesn't have any high slots, that implant would not work. But at the same time, there is that question, well, if it doesn't have any high slots, does it affect the lightweight ships? Because the lightweight ships that I use relevance. So there's a lot of options there that the developers can take to change how the implants work. I really hope that they don't tamper with that, because it would mess up a lot of things. But again, if you actually tell me what you think about that. Should they limit the use of implants to be only effective on ships that actually have the weapons for the implant? Would be a interesting topic to talk about, I guess.
Docking request accepted.
Well, let me dock and let me go to a different layout. 5.9 million, 63, 66, 79 and 70% resistance. Now a lot of you guys have been asking me what type of build do I actually prefer. Now that's a very broad topic, I would say. I like to... most of my slow ships are actually tanks. However, there are some rare occasions where I actually go and take the Revelation out with a DPS build. Doesn't happen that often though, but sometimes I do that, and then I have about 20 to 30,000 DPS on the ship. But on the versatile assault ships, on the faction carriers, I would probably go full tank, because these things are expensive and you can bet that you'll be the primary target if you decide to fly these things. Now with this layout, with this build, I have lower overall hit points. That's
Docking
because
request
I think the
accepted.
rigs are also changed a little bit, so this is with the DPS build. And now the full-on chunk. Now this is the build that the villain from the Kill Mail was using, and I actually really like that build. It is a fleet build that relies on your logistic ships to keep you alive. You will have a lot of armor. Now this thing has 1.8 million armor hit points, and the capacitor is actually stable. Very interesting. Let's undock and let's see what's the maximum possible tank achievable with this ship. Now I did not see the rigs of the villain that was destroyed. I suspect that they had DPS rigs, because it didn't look like they tanked much, which is weird because these things should be able to withstand a lot of DPS. Or perhaps there's also the chance that the logistics died before the ship died, so perhaps there was nothing to repair the ship. But again, if anyone has information on what happens, then please do tell me. I'm very interested to know what happened. 15 million hit points, 87, 87, 91 and 88% resistance. Okay. With the defense mode active, it's 20 million hit points, 90, 91, 93, 91%. Okay. And with the damage control active, 59 million hit points, 97, 97, 98 and 97. That's a lot of hit points. Not the highest number that I've seen. I think on the Anaconda I managed to get like 80 million or something like that with a very similar build using extenders, but still, this is a lot of tank. And again, the villain is known to have one of the highest base armor volumes out of any ship in the game.
Docking request accepted.
Which is honestly quite interesting, honestly. Okay, well, I think it's time to take this boat for a ride.
Autopilot in game.
And
Destination reached.
I forgot to change the implants. Now, when you're running, let's say you're running PvE,
Docking
you
request
are
accepted.
running some anomalies in nullsec. I'm 100% sure no one will run low-sec missions with this thing. I hope no one does that, because that's going to be a very easy kill. But at the same time, there is this little paradox where it's actually very safe to fly these things into low-sec for missions, because you have so much tank and you have so much DPS now, and overall nothing can tackle you.
Undocking.
If there's a random interceptor trying to tackle you, you just throw the lightweight ships on the interceptor and they eat the interceptor alive. But at the same time, there is always the danger that the scout that spots your ship is not going to engage you immediately. They might play the patient game. They might wait for more ships to arrive, and then they might throw a heavy tackle on your ship, and then you might be in trouble. So, while on paper, when I'm looking at the ship and at the stats and at the DPS and tank, it's one of the safest
Warp
ships.
drive active.
I know that sounds crazy, probably is crazy actually, because who in the world will actually go and eat one of these ships into low sec for a total mission? Well, no one. But talking about a hypothetical situation here because the stats are pretty good. The stats on these ships are now really good, and the ship can do it. It's just not really recommended because there's a lot of hungry pirates in Lowsec waiting for a opportunity like that. But yeah, possible, but I wouldn't personally recommend doing that. I would keep these things only in deep nullsec where you have your friends and alliance and corporation at your side. Well, no, not exactly the alliance, because you know blue tackle exists, but around your corporation, if you have pilots who you trust, then you can probably use this ship around them. Now, recently you also have received the custom drone fighter lightweight ship orbit option that you can set on your ship. Now, my optimal range is at about 18.8 kilometers. I'll set the lightweight ship orbit at 18.8 kilometers so that they orbit at their optimal range. You can set any orbit that you like, but my friends recommended me, and I know from my personal experience that the optimal range is the optimal range, and that's about the best distance that you can set for these ships. Of course, we can set closer or even more further away, depends on the situation, but for best tracking it is recommended to go about the optimal range. With missile lightweight ships, it is important that you set the optimal range, or at least to set the orbit within the optimal range, because you don't want to be too far, because missiles will not reach the target. Also, don't want to be too close because the lightweight ships can be destroyed, so a balance between the range is a good idea. Now, I noticed something very interesting here. I feel like the Astarte is clearing this a bit faster. Now, little fun fact: the Astarte in EVE Online is the tier 2 battlecruiser using the Brutix hull, a very good ship, a very nice little boat. Meanwhile, in this game, the Astarte is a faction capital ship. Very interesting, because I remember someone talking about that, and since I play EVE Online quite actively, I'm quite familiar with that, so that's a little fun fact. Not really sure if they took other names from other ships. I have to actually double check that. EVE Online has so many ships, it's really hard to keep track of all the boats that are flying over there, but I'll definitely check it out of pure curiosity to see if there are more ships that share the names. Probably is, most likely. Now, how does the performance of this ship feel? And the developers themselves have said that the missile lightweight ships were outperforming the turret lightweight ships, so they have enhanced the turret ones a lot. And again, I was, I think, the first one who talked about that a long time ago, basically right on the day when the assault carriers have been released, and I'm very happy that the developers watch the videos and that they listen to what I had to say. So now the lightweight ships are a bit more balanced. Now, I really hope that they also hear me saying this. I would say that they balanced them out before the previous patch, because the new skills that have been added only affect the turret lightweight ships, but they don't affect the missile ones. So basically, most of the skills for the lightweight ships, with the exclusion of the skills that increase the overall damage on both, but there are the gunnery skills that only increase the performance of the turret lightweight ships. The missile ships don't have any specific missile skills, and the gunnery skills seem to have balanced them out. So even before the recent patch, with the new modules and with the new balance. Even before that, the turret lighter ships were about on par with the missile ones, but now after the patch, I would say that the turret light ships outperform the missile ones. Although that's not really accurate to say, because the missile light ships also have some advantages over the turret ones. For example, the missiles just never miss, while the turrets can miss, and the bombers do a lot of damage on battleships, while the turret ones might not do as much damage, but you know, they still do plenty of alpha to basically anything that you throw them at. But the bombers have a very specific place that I like. Basically, the bomber squad, as I like to call them, they're excellent to quickly burn down a battleship. They're also good for burning down battlecruisers, although for battlecruisers and cruisers and frigates you can use the interceptor lightweight ships, or you can also easily use the stars. The stars became universal. You can use them for all targets, although they will not do as much alpha damage to big targets as bombers will do. And I'll just make a quick prediction here that may came true or might not come true, but who knows. I was accurate so far with the previous skills and with the previous balance changes, but I just believe, I just had that feeling that they will add the missile skills for the lightweight ships, just because I believe, and well, the tests that I did so far show that the turret lightweight ships are outperforming the missile ones, and I believe in order to balance them out, they will go and add the new skills for the missile lightweight ships, so that they become closer. But as we all know how balancing lately goes, the weapon that was underperforming, or the weapon type that was underperforming, is now overperforming. Meanwhile, the previous overpowered item is now underperforming, and I believe when the next skills come out that the missiles will outperform turrets a second time. But again, that's just pure speculation at the moment. I have no data on any new skills or anything like that. Just, you know, speculating, because that's what my feeling is telling me that will happen. And so far, I have to say that I was quite accurate with the updates. I was quite accurate with the modules. So far, everything that I predicted about the modules for these monsters, it has been added. Although I'll just say I expected the damage mod to be different, and that's one thing that I don't really like. I expected them to release two modules, not one module that is basically everything combined. So that's the only thing that is a little bit odd, but I guess the module is very unique. Now you can't use the module on the battleships. You can't use that module on any other ship besides the versatile assault ships. I would try to slap the module in the other ships for the lols, but it is a lightweight ship specific, so it's not going to work on anything else besides lightweight ships. Although it would be pretty hilarious if that module ends up working on all ships. I believe that would be quite hilarious. It would add a lot more interesting builds, to say the least, if that ends up being the case. But I can guarantee you it's only going to work on the lightweight ships. I remember when the lightweight ships came out for the first time, a lot of you guys asked me to try out the different damage mods. I tried all, trust me, I tried everything. I tried to find something that perhaps, you know, the developers haven't thought about, and all combinations that I tried, unfortunately, did not end up increasing the DPS back then. But I had fun to play around, and honestly, so far, I had a lot of fun testing these things out. because they're quite unique ships. And in EVE Online we don't have faction carriers. We have, I think we have the Navy carriers. We have the Navy, not carriers, but Navy dreadnoughts, and they're pretty interesting ships. Although in EVE Online, I don't think I'll fly dreadnoughts in that game. My limit in EVE Online will probably be cruisers. I like my cruisers, and I am primarily a cruiser pilot. In this game, I'm also primarily a cruiser pilot. Best skills for cruisers. So that's a very interesting thing. But you might ask me, well, you're a cruiser pilot. Why do you fly your Revelation? And well, unfortunately, well, cruisers are fun. They're good ships. A cruiser is not going to win a war. A cruiser is simply not going to win a big fight. A simple Ortrus is not going to win against multiple Apocalypse strikers, but the Revelation will, and that's why I fly the Revelation. Usually, if I get jumped by a bunch of ships. So, in order to counter that, I have to fly something that's chunked to the roof, something tanky as hell, something that is nearly immortal, and you know, the Revelation with the resistance stats and with the skills falls just in that beautiful category that I need. However, if you are a carrier pilot and if you're looking for something similar to what I'm doing with the Revelation, then the faction carriers are definitely the way to go. The faction carriers have excellent tank. I have to say this though, they have a lot more hit points, and overall they have a chance to have a lot more resistance than dreadnoughts, but they lack the repair capability that dreadnoughts have from the siege mode. So while you have a lot of tank and they're definitely extremely difficult to kill, they still don't have the same repair as the dreadnoughts, and that's nothing, you know, that's nothing bad. It's not going to affect a lot, honestly. It just means that you have to know when it's time to bail and when it's time to jump out, warp out, because eventually the tank will be broken. Now the same thing can also be applied to the dreadnoughts. The only difference is that they can repair themselves for quite a while. The main issue with the dreadnoughts is the capacitor. Once the capacitor runs down, the ship will go down. So I usually build my tank benchmark is 60 seconds to withstand a lot of DPS, and so far all of my ships passed that test. When they don't pass the test, I tell you, so that you know how much the DPS and how much the ship can take. But you know, I think I'm mostly known for the super chunk tanks, for the super brick tanks. So yeah, if there's someone that is expert in tank, well, I think that's me. I've been building tanks for quite a while. I find it hilarious. Some of the comments say the builds are unrealistic. Meanwhile, there's literally a X-type villain yeeting at a citadel, and he died with X-types. And who knows what other rigs have been installed. So yeah, and my own Revelation has A-types installed. So I mean, I use the builds that I show you here because they work. I like them. They're good, and so far I haven't had anyone complain about the performance of the builds. So you know, I'm quite happy with that. Always listening for advice and for player advice, because I value that a lot. Well then, that was a very good run. Now, it didn't clear the mission as quickly as the Astarte, and I think that's because of the damage type of the lightweight ships. So that's something that I noticed. It took me about 60 minutes to clear this. With the Astarte it took me 12 minutes. Same mission, same system. So the villain is definitely a very robust and a very dangerous little boat. Unfortunately, we saw the first villain on the server get destroyed yesterday, so yeah, it happens, but I'm pretty sure the pilot had a lot of fun, although I noticed a lot of blacks on the market. So yeah, Perhaps it might actually reduce the Plex price. Who knows? I mean, Plex is wild at the moment. But in any
Docking
case,
request
I
accepted.
hope that you guys enjoyed this little run with the villain. Again, this is a fantastic little boat. It's buffed. Its performance is definitely much better than it used to be. And with that being said, if you would like to support me, feel free to like and subscribe. And with that being said, stay safe, fly safe, and I'll see you next time.